wait for another 5 minutes or so. Okay.
This is the first I've seen.
It's pretty simple. But like, you can see it, it's like, oh shit. Yep, we
你
have
就得
zero.
熬一晚上，你关键是你至少可以比得上我。我原来考过这种试，就是第二天赶飞机，第一天就从这边飘着，就在这儿，妈两个人打过打了1晚上。第二天早上要去赶飞机，要不去不行，关了一个那个1点多了睡，妈在飞机上睡不下去，你知道吗？哎呦！完全睡不着。
I don't know about next year.
我买游戏本吧，每个本身还不如买台式。
Yeah, some of my slides are missing. It's alright. We just use whatever.
我们两个都一般，我们两个一般，我们两个都一般。
应该sorry。
一个刚刚能过去的，说得过去的，不知道有刚刚能过。继续做。不要慢慢。什么？21分。reasonable， reasonable 吗？不可能，我他妈都没做完。因为今天出分了。好的，就是对接着来说，坏的人可都骗来了。你还在想啥？还有电脑。你们每天早上起床都不看着我的手机吗？他要看的呀。很票登的游戏，肯定没登。他今天一早就出了，还是那种重要的。你看到没有？我说你肯定没登。你个傻屌！
10 past. Let's get started. Right. Any questions from last week? Do you remember what we did last? Yes? No? Okay. So last week we just covered the different types of techniques that's available in a somewhat superficial way. Okay. I guess unfortunately for this course, unless we only get like 8 classes, not 8 months, so we really don't get much time to cover every single thing in great detail. But I do my best so you guys get enough information or enough guidelines to get you to pass exam in flying colours, okay, and also do the assignment, okay. So I'm going to cover a few more things today. Hopefully that will help with your assignment. I'm still not getting enough students for the assignments. I don't know what happened with the rest of the class. So I also had an issue with my email and internet and everything this week, last 24 hours. So if you email me, I'll probably won't respond to anything. Well, I'll try to respond to something. Anyway. Nothing is working today, or this past day. Anyway. So if you have anything urgent, just come up to me and ask me. Okay, this is not working. All right. Has everyone in this room started on their assignment? Has a group to work with? Yeah. Okay, and have started on it. Have you started on your assignment? I hope so. It is 20%. Someone did request last week to give an outline of, in terms of marking guideline. So I'll go through that at the end of class today. Hopefully that will help you. Look, marking guidelines is so rough. It's not scientific. Okay, if you do write a really awesome, policy proposal, and it is so good. Every year I get it really good. There's always one or two that's exceptional. Okay? Yes, I do give bonus marks out. Okay. I will cover that. I'll cover them at the end of the class. Okay. Okay. Anyway, so today we start off with some short questions. I assume everyone has done them. Yeah. Okay. Good idea to do them. It's a good summary of the week's work. Can we attain optimal pollution level through market mechanism and bargaining? Yeah, okay. Remember Professor Ronald Coase? Okay. What is the role of government in obtaining the optimal level of pollution? Lots of roles for the government. Okay. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll all go broke. What are the assumptions made for bargaining between polluter and pollutee? Actually, I'm not even sure pollutee is actually a actual word, but anyway, I'm not sure whether it's in the actual Oxford Dictionary word. We'll just call it pollutee. People that get affected by the pollution. Okay. Can government intervention be justified? Sometimes it might not be you might not be able to justify government intervention, but that's pretty rare. Okay. If there's market failure, almost government has to come in and do something about it. Government has set up a transferable quota system where it gives away permits to the polluters and asks them to trade thereafter. How does this system respond to new firms that enter the industry and have a positive level of pollution? This problem is such a real problem. Okay, it's been a problem for a lot of the different types of carbon pricing schemes out there. From memory, I think there's 40 plus types of some sort of carbon pricing scheme globally. I think 40 maybe just a bit over. There's actually a carbon pricing tracker thing online somewhere. So there's a system that comes up around the world. Anyway, so this problem is a really big problem when it comes to, especially for tradable permits. Okay, emission permits. Okay, lots of problems. Okay, I think I discussed it last week as well. And you have this Labour's emission trading scheme. Hello.
I think it might be subscribers only. No.
Oh, so do you guys get the, yeah, I noticed that when I was, yeah. So do you guys get the PDF? Did you upload a PDF?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the PDF should, I've printed it out, I've printed as a PDF out on the site, so it's not subscribed, so you guys can read it as well. Otherwise, if for the really keen, actually you should. Libraries have access to it. You should be able to access it. It might not be the most current one. You might not have today's edition, for example, but you should have a big one. You should get it. But anyway, for whatever reading material, I always print it out so it's available for you guys to read, regardless of whether you are subscribed or not. Okay. So let's just get into a bit more detail. So can we get this optimal level of pollution? Okay. First of all, you have to define what this level of pollution is. Remember this whole. If you ever done economics in the past, is the optimal point is always a marginal revenue equals a marginal cost. Okay. If you ever done some elementary type of economics. Okay. So in any branch of economics, there's always some special terms, specific terms, or whatever we analyze. And for environmental economics, we call this optimal point. It's actually first order condition. Okay, first if you do calculus. Marginal bet is when marginal cost of abatement, which is like a marginal benefit. Okay, marginal abatement cost equals marginal damage cost. Okay, marginal damage cost can be we just call it marginal cost. Whatever. Okay. Good enough. Okay, so that line is there on purpose, by the way. it's not. So recall optimal pollution level is located where the marginal benefit of the last unit of pollution. Remember, in economics, we are concerned with marginal changes. Okay, not so much the aggregate change, but marginal changes. Okay, so marginal is the last unit to change. Okay, last unit of pollution equals the marginal cost of pollution. At this particular level, the net benefit to society are maximized. Okay, as I've said, if you ever done calculus, is when you take the first order condition to zero. Okay, when it stops, when a particle stops moving, I call it. Okay, if you're gonna do those physics stuff. Okay, so that's when it's maximized. Okay, mathematically anyway. Assuming all externalities of pollution, external pollution, are accounted for, this resulting level of pollution will be optimal. Okay, so it's magically, awesomely optimal level of production of pollution. Okay, remember, no pollution does not mean it's optimal. Society, we do demand things. Okay, we do demand goods and services. It's hard for it's almost pretty much impossible for us to turn back time back to primitive days when there's no chairs, no lecterns, or no nothing. So there's no such. We can't do that anymore. We have. So I mean, just like you guys, how you do your assignment, we always consider the policy from as of today and move forward, not going backward to rainforest times. Primitive days. We can't just go back and go, back in the, in the 800 BC or something, everything is great. There's no climate change. We can't go back to that time. Okay, we already see what we have, and we want to maintain that. And but if we do go back to that sort of stage, back in the slightly primitive stage, society we might be experiencing negative benefits. Okay, we're not happy about it. Okay. So. That's how we economists view things. And remember that part of this course is to understand how to talk to economists. And we are always really for different people. Okay, how do we identify this optimal level? Remember this equimarginal principle? Okay, I might have just chat about this in passing. There is actually a proper formula to work it out, of course, and it's that's something you see what you dig deep into working out if you go into modeling. Okay. But roughly, it is once again when MAC equals MDC. Abatement through either output reduction or by using abatement technology. Okay. So when you look at any form of climate type of policies, you always end up looking at things like abatement, innovation, R&D. That's when this whole abatement technology comes in. It's all about just finding ways to continue production at the same amount, but reducing not maintaining pollution the same, if not reducing it. Okay. So that's where engineering comes into. Okay, bottom-up solutions. Okay. You guys are familiar with top-down and bottom-up modeling? Kind of. So it's literally looking at, so engineering, for example, you'll be looking at the nitty-gritties and technologies and work your way up, so that will be bottom-up. Economists are top-down people. So we get that's why we do get accused of being overly airy-fairy at times, okay? But I think engineering and economics do gel quite well together, okay? Remember, all these policy implementations, etc., is a multidisciplinary approach, okay? We really cannot look at anything in isolation anymore. Everything is, like, we have to consider everything, okay? We will come across a really famous economist he's still alive. He's not one of those ones that no longer exist. Okay, he is actually one of the few economists that came up with the whole idea of multidisciplinary approach in, I guess, tackling climate change mitigation, pollution mitigation. Anyway, so back before I get excited about climate change. Actually, I'm not really excited about climate change. It's terrible. Okay. Any questions? Clear, very clear. Yes, this is. So all these things is what I call climate change 101. Okay, you really need to know these things in order to even bother considering the policy. Okay. Finally, abatement costs will change as market condition and production abatement technology takes effect, resulting in new level of optimal pollution. So this point of optimal pollution, it's ever changing. It doesn't stay at, say, $30, okay, or $30 tax, whatever amount of pollution. It doesn't stay. It's dynamic, okay. So part of the reason why the guy that I'm going to show you, he came up with this dynamic system, and it's quite fascinating. His modeling is quite fascinating. It's dynamic. That's why taxes are great. Anyway. Oh, there's more to it. Okay. How do we achieve through this the optimal level of pollution via the price mechanism, market mechanism? So remember the Coase theorem, okay? Remember Ronald Coase did not come up with the Coase theorem. He came up with this idea, and people coined this theorem called the Coase theorem. But of course, he won the Nobel Prize for his idea, obviously. Okay, and he's famous for a lot of things too, not just environmental economics. So whenever you hear Ronald Coase theorem, you think of property right. Okay, they basically go hand in hand with each other. Okay, how the optimal level of pollution is attained through the market with property. So how we do this with property right well defined, transaction cost is zero, and there's no information asymmetries. Those are three factors that basically make or break a climate a bargaining. Okay, of using bargaining between pollutees to achieve this optimal level of pollution. Okay, so these are the three things. Property right, transaction costs, low transaction costs, perfect information. Okay, three things that will ensure that that the optimal level of pollution can be attained through bargaining. Okay? And that's his theorem. And of course, only a very naive person would think that will work in real life, of course. Okay? But obviously, it doesn't. And that's really just the starting point for where government should focus on when they implement a policy. All right. Does it ring a bell now from last week? Kind of getting back into it. Okay. So which comes up to the government. Okay. Obviously, the first question leads to the second one. Okay. So when property right, it's when it's well defined. Okay. Cost is transaction cost trivial. These all bargaining will always take place. Okay. And I guess the role of government is to minimize, to facilitate that to happen. Okay, whether it is establishment of a clearinghouse, some sort of trading house, I should call it, trading house. It's called clearinghouse because you know, you have the equilibrium, the market clearing. We call it the market clearing price. We call them clearinghouses. Okay. Yes. I think one time wrote cleaning house instead. I accidentally, like, what's cleaning house? What's cleaning house got to do with trading? Anyway, so okay, so that's part of government's role. There you go. Transaction costs. If you have some sort of website, you know, everyone can see each other's demand for how many quotas they demand, for example. Okay. There you go. Any questions? What a beautiful theorem. So beautiful.
I have a question.
Yes, you do.
So for attaining the optimal level of pollution, it says we have to have the MAC equals MDC,
Yeah.
but also we have to obtain the marginal benefit equals marginal cost.
Oh, no, that's the same. It's the same thing. It's the same concept. The reason I said marginal, MAC is really in another type of economic, in a more, I guess, generalized economic, macroeconomics. Okay, we call it marginal benefit and marginal cost. But in environmental economics, we call that marginal benefit marginal abatement cost. It's the same concept. In case I've only put it up there so it's a bit easy to remember if anyone's done economics in the past. So just set us aside. This is for people that have done economics in the past. Do you know marginal revenue? Marginal revenue. MR, marginal revenue. You don't need this for your exam. Marginal. Okay. MR. You can also call this a marginal benefit, and in environmental econ speak, we call it MAC. It can be viewed as an MAC, as marginal abatement cost. Okay, and then you have your marginal. This is terrible. Marginal. Oh, this is even worse. Should I get my markers up? Oh, there's more of this better one. So you have your marginal benefit. Oh, not marginal benefit, sorry, marginal cost. Okay. MC. I think MC is the one that's kind of used across everywhere. It's easiest one to because we economists, the problem with our discipline is like it's really hard to standardize one thing, but it's the same concept, but it's just hard to standardize because who's the right one, who's the right person? Even market-based instruments has like 5 different terms for it. I just call it price and quantity. Anyway, so marginal cost, we also call it marginal damage cost, MDC. Okay. So that's a marginal damage cost. That's the damage. So this one here and this one here are more specific to environmental economics. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if anyone's ever interested, it's like first, as I said, it's derivation, first order condition. Anyway, you don't need to reproduce that in an exam, by the way. I don't do equations as much as I want to. I'm not allowed. Okay. Okay, what was I doing? Role of government, awesome. Okay, any questions? No, Jess. Oh, that's more. I'm really confusing you guys here now. What are the assumption made for bargaining between polluter and pollutees to take place? Oh, again, here we go. 0. We're going to be dreaming about this tonight. About Coase theorem tonight. Transaction cost 0, perfect information, well-defined property right. So here's the interesting thing, okay? The assumption, so he made so Coase also made a point about where the property right is with which person. Okay, if the property right is with the pollutee, okay, then other costs will be borne upon by the polluter, okay, and vice versa. And the point here is that it doesn't matter where the property right who the property right belongs to, okay. It can still achieve the same level of pollution, optimal level of pollution. That's a fascinating point that he pointed out in this paper. Okay. As long as this property right, regardless who it belongs to, as long as it is well defined, it doesn't really matter who who belongs to. It's like whether it's your house or my house. Okay, it's a bit like that. Okay. Sorry, it doesn't matter. Okay. Any comments? Apart from extremely confused. So, just the main point here is this one here. The same level of optimal pollution will still be achieved regardless of who the property right belongs to, whether it's from the victim or from the people polluting the place. Of course, distributional benefit might differ. Okay, it might differ. Okay, it really depends on. It really depends. Okay. But in terms of asking whether, let's just call it Q star, okay? This optimal level of pollution in terms of achieving this doesn't matter. Okay? Either way can achieve. Which kind of leads to when you go further down the track, working out whether carbon tax or carbon trading is better. It doesn't really matter because of this idea. Okay. But of course, once again, the distributional benefits might differ in some way. Okay. Yeah. I guess one of the things why tradable quotas, emission trading schemes are a lot more popular in a political sense because so people out there knows that what's the maximum level of pollution that will be in the atmosphere. So it's more certain in that sense. Even though economists always go, oh look, if you put the right tax on, the right amount of pollution will be achieved. So one is a bit uncertain and the other is more certain, even though if you set the right price or set the right amount of quota, it's still the same. Okay, so it doesn't really matter, honestly, it doesn't matter. Which is also the point. Which is also the point of this guy. Oh, I'm so excited to show you this guy. So this guy his name is William Norhaus. Okay, he was a Nobel Prize winner for last year for part of his contribution to climate change. Anyway, so I have to go back to this first. Okay. So he went on and on. He actually spent like 40 years investigating climate change and policies. Fascinating. Anyway, I'll talk about that later. Okay, number 5. Government set up this transferable quota system. What issue can you see? So just a bit more to this question, how does the government give away permits? Okay, that's a $1 million question, quite literally $1 million question. Okay, it's most of the time, most commonly it's based on historic views. Okay, and we call that grandfathering. Okay. So you see it in a lot of articles, especially of some of the older ETS schemes, okay, some of the really older ones. They talk about grandfathering versus auction. Okay. That's what grandfathering means. It's basically just, okay, see, what have you done, how much pollution have you been polluting in the past? We'll give you this amount of quota, trade quota that you can trade on the market. Okay. Highly controversial because, man, what if I just install this, install a much better filter, and now I'm getting a lot less quota as a result. These free quotas as a result. Okay. Not happy. A lot of people will not be happy. Okay. So it obviously favours those who've been emitting pollution, pretty high in a pretty high range. Okay. So the more you pollute, you'll get more quota. That's what grandfathering means, really. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And hurts those who emit comparatively less. So new firms who enter the market are now required to purchase all necessary permits. So basically increasing this, what we call barriers to entry. Did I put it there? So in terms of market structure, remember, I think just intuitively, you know that the more firms out there, the better prices you get, just generally. Yeah. Okay. So when you have a monopoly, when you have a high barriers to entry refers to how easy it is to get into an industry. So it could be anything like selling ice cream, which is fairly easy. There's not much investment. Okay. To things like I guess a power plant, which requires pretty high barriers to entry in terms of getting your big power plant set up would be billions, million, whatever. Okay. And finding your source of your coal source, your power source. Okay. So it ranges from like your pretty easy barriers to entry. You'll see a lot of firm on the market, so prices are fairly good, really competitive, to all the way to the other end, which is like monopoly, oligopoly, like one or two firms in the market, maybe just three, usually three. Okay. So those firms are characterized by very high barriers to entry. So in this case here, if a new firm who enters the market, okay, have to now not just putting up with the amount of investments, okay, putting up amount of investment to build a power plant, they also have to buy these quotas to enter the market, which essentially means an increase in barriers to entering this market. Okay, just a higher wall to get in. It's going to cost them a lot more, and it's a bit. So it just gives incumbent firms and firms that's already in the business, it gives them a much bigger competitive advantage. Maybe just in the short term, but still, like when you're just entering a market, like you make a massive loss already as it is for first 10 years or whatever. Okay, not great. All right. Okay. So also unfair to firms, as I said before, unfair for firms who had already invested in cleaner technology. All right, not great. Especially, policy just come in without any warning in a lot of times. So that's just not really fair at all. So an alternative to grandfathering is what we call an auction. Okay, we all heard of auctions, especially in the housing market. So you basically just there's many types of auctions, but generally, you have this item here. You just bid the highest price, price. So you get the highest price that someone's willing to pay for or something. Okay. And another, so you either go for auction or just grandfather. So either way has its pros and cons. So as policymakers, we have to work out which is the best. Okay. So you have to so in terms of as an investigator, you go, okay, let's just go into the industry, say power industry. Which players are there? There might be 3 or 4 players. And you go to each individual firm and you go, okay, what has this firm done in the past 10 years? Have they invested in better filter system, innovation, invest in R&D, those sort of things? You go to each individual firm and try and understand what have they done so far, okay? And then you decide, okay, maybe we can grandfather it out if all 4 firms say pretty much have the same sort of technology, hasn't changed in 10 years. Is still polluting grossly. Okay, so you can go. Okay, we can get grandfathered. That's fine. I mean, historic emission has been fairly steady for them. However, if you go to firms, if you go to another industry, renewables or some other renewables aren't that polluting, but some other firms, you're like, oh, this guy has some R&D, has done a lot of R&D, invested in so much innovation, cleaner technology, cleaner, better filters. But this guy just polluting like no tomorrow. So that would be different ball game. Okay. So with any type of policy, that's why I said it's really hard to just look at something just like that, like in a global level. It's we should really just be focus and target on one particular region. Okay. I guess the main problem with something like emissions trade, global climate change, okay, because air you can't stop air from flowing to another border. Like air knows no borders, okay. We know we have borders, but you can't just stop air not going to another country. I think that's another issue. That's a pollution-based issue. Anyway, so that's more like a discussion. Any questions? it's getting complex, isn't it? It's not just like just slap on a tax, slap on a, put some property right, like fake property right onto some air and then trade it. It's not that easy. No, it's getting a bit complicated. Wait till you get to the modelling. Not an easy thing. So for those that had a chance to read this article, I know this is subscription only, but I've as I said earlier, I've always printed out a PDF so you guys can read it. Okay. Anyone's watched that Bill Shorten's speech last night in ABC? His response to the budget. So we're going to vote in about a month's time, by the way, guys. Don't forget to vote. Yeah, so he was so passionate about. Also, he mentioned he spent maybe 20 seconds talking about climate change, and that was it. Everything else is, I can't remember what he talked about, but all I remember was climate change is important. And then he went on about, he went all emotional and started talking about cancer funds and stuff. Yeah. Well, you know, I think if you fix the environment, it might actually help a lot more people, to be honest. And I'm a bit big picture, I'm a bit kind of bigger picture person. What do I know? Anyway, so a proposal, Labor proposed a new emissions cap. It's quite popular. Baseline and credit, okay? You don't reach that baseline. If you go under the baseline, you can sell these credits. Pretty much that's the scheme. There's different types, okay? That's one of them. So essentially penalising. So penalties pay if pollution exceeds a certain cap. So you literally cap it there somewhere, okay? Or baseline, they stay with some, or exceed a certain cap, or baseline, they call it baseline. So Labor kind of, I say stay, it's not like kind of piggybacking, I don't know, okay. With something similar to what the what the coalition has in their budget, okay. He said that they don't want another policy change. They don't want people to change whatever that is in place too much. Okay. And he cited some exemptions. So he exempts energy sector, which is like largest polluting. I don't know, big sector to actually exempt. So he outlined some exceptions in the energy sector. So he started subsidise. See subsidies in play against subsidies. 100,000 household batteries, underwriting clean energy generation, and if the current government changes their mind, embrace the national energy guarantee. We should not so cynical about politics. Anyway, so agriculture. Farmers being paid to offset carbon emission by other sectors through such measures such as growing trees and managing their soil. Okay. Also be national wide bans on large-scale land clearing. That's already actually happening. It's just sometimes it's hard. Like when you're trying to, like especially with agriculture, right? Having an extra tree on a paddock can be quite dangerous for them. Okay? So it is a big cost for them. Like if they don't clear something. So currently they have to go through a lot of process just to clear tree. But I don't know how it's going to do that, to be honest. Anyway. So you see there's already two I guess, price kind of policy that he outlined in his article, in the report, newspaper article. Subsidy and, three policies. Subsidy 1 to energy sector, subsidy 2 to agriculture, and then just some sort of outright ban on something. Okay, that's what we call uniform standard. Okay. Anyway, and then you come back to this baseline and credit scheme, which is another one that he proposed, okay, involve a step up from the previous coalition safeguard mechanism from heavy polluters, which set an, N, not A, so N emissions threshold so high at 100,000 tonnes per year. So it covers about 140 businesses, and no one was penalised for exceeding it. Okay, that's bad. So a cap will be phased down to a quarter of what they plan to be of carbon emission a year. So what they're planning to do if they get elected to government is to really reduce the cap by a fair bit. Okay. This baseline by a fair bit, I should say. Escape clauses. It is funny. Escape clauses allowing businesses to offset excessive emission. So a business comes in under the threshold, they can carry the credit over to next year. So that's his baseline and credit scheme, okay? Or they could make money on an achievement by selling the credit to another business. So it's from their point of view, it's creating some incentive for them to emit less, okay? So it's so the controversy lies in allowing the heavy polluters to offset its emission through the purchase of relatively cheap international credits. Okay, this is very interesting. So crossing borders now. So the current government policy don't allow this international purchase of credits. Okay, it's a bit strange to be honest because you're thinking about Australia and it's not in Europe. If it's Europe, if it's a country in Europe, then it would make a lot of sense. Which is why that's what happened. But being so far away from everything else seems a bit strange. Anyway, whatever. Labour, I'm just here to report, not to comment, even though I can't help commenting. Labour will not contribute to its emission reduction target by factoring the carrying over from Australia, supposedly exceeding its Kyoto Protocol target. Okay, of cutting emission by 5%. To 5% on 2005 to 22 levels by 2020. Okay, you guys heard of the Kyoto Protocol? It's been around for a long time. Yeah, it doesn't really work. I mean, it doesn't comply. Most countries comply. It's doing okay. It's fine. Whatever. It's what we call a standard. Okay. Anyway. Labour's approach isn't about punishing polluters. It's about partnering with industry to find real practical solutions to cut pollution in a way that protects and grows industries and jobs. It's all about jobs. Okay. God. So I roll. Okay. It's all right. At least it gets mentioned in the news. I'm pretty stoked. So want to see? This is a really interesting part. I'm talking about R&D. Okay. They want all of us to move to electric vehicles. Okay. And target emission standard on petrol and diesel vehicles. So ambitiously, well, it's actually not that ambitious. I think over time, if electric cars if they're easier to service, if they're not so expensive, if the aftercare cost is not so high, and I don't know, like if access to electricity charging stations is easier than just as prevalent as say petrol stations. Go for it. I think eventually we will naturally go to 50% anyway, if not more. So this is more like a standard, okay? Like since we are in an environmental economic lecture, okay, we're thinking, okay, we start to dissect an article with from all these big words and go, this is a price instrument, this is a quantity instrument, this is a standard. Okay, so here is a standard. Okay, he wants 50% new cars. All car sales by 2030 should be electric vehicles. Okay, it will be the same 50% target for 2025 for purchase of government vehicle fleet purchase. Okay, so the government can set an example and create a second-hand market in the future. I wonder who came up with that. It's interesting. Introduce emission standards on petrol cars with the aim of phasing in a limit 105 grams per kilometre to travel. I have no idea where that came from. Anyway, so some sort of limit. Okay. So once again, more standards here, more standards. Bringing Australia in line with US standards, but not up to the stricter EU standards. Business incentive to replace the fleet with electric vehicles. So anything we do with this sort of incentive, business incentive is like subsidies, okay, or some sort of tax benefits or something. So, tax reduction, in company tax reduction, whatever. Okay, by including the purchase of such cars in this proposed Australian investment guarantee. Okay, all right. So as you see in this, I can't get back. Okay. So as you see in this simple article, right, he outlined a lot of different types of policies, types of ways to, I guess, mitigate climate pollution emissions. Okay. And as you see, there's your quantity, there's your price instruments, and there's your standards, okay? You can see, just for something like this, right? I mean, by just proposing something like that, it's for the car sale, for example. You know what? All it takes is for, if electric cars becomes, like, if they over time becomes cheaper, like not just Tesla ones, okay? Tesla's a cool one. They look just this. If they come up with cars that are affordable, if the aftercare cost is not so high, cost not just in terms of monetary cost, but also finding somewhere to top up your car in electricity. If it's that easy, it usually takes like a while to charge, right? I don't get an electric vehicle. I know there's charging stations at the UNSW car park. But you know, all in all, they're not that common, okay, at the moment. It's just really hard. Like, you know, nowadays you just drive the car like, oh look, I just fill up when the petrol price is low and they're everywhere. You're driving when the red light comes up in your car and you're like, oh, I can see a petrol station. I'm certain there's queue for me to top up the car with. Whereas if you have an electric vehicle, you're not really sure. You kind of have to do things like in advance, and most of us aren't very good at that. Okay. I guess some of the hybrid cars are pretty good too. You know, you have the petrol tank and the electric option. But all in all, if all those factors are sorted out, then we will eventually just start using electric vehicles. We don't even need this sort of policy to push it towards that. In fact, you know what? If the government is really smart, they can come up with these great, awesome plans, but at the same time, they know we're going to achieve that anyway if they have a really good foresight. So, okay. So it would be if they're that clever and they can forecast that by 2030, it will be 50% electric vehicle anyway, whether we say anything or not. You know, so that will be like, oh, we reach policy goals without really their interventions. You know. So in cases like that, whether government intervention is necessary or not, you know, that's really up to debate. We don't really need it. Okay, because it's based on there's other factors you can deal with that you can ensure this to happen. You can help that happen. Okay. Okay. Any questions? That's all the 2 questions. Straightforward? Yeah. Okay. I hope you learned something from the articles. Like, I just thought it was so fascinating. Like how much stuff he's pushing out, and he's not even in government yet. They're not in government. I don't know what it is yet. Who knows? We'll find out in a month. Right? Take a break, guys. Come back about 5 past. Oh, the notes are Moodle now, guys.
It's just kind of because the first person part is half an hour. So because I don't have access to their stuff yet, I have to do all the research myself. The first part says what is the existing conditions of human health in the baseline, and then the first part is related to mine, and then I can improve on this, like you said. But if I don't have what we have right now, then I have to that I'm not sure if they started us.
Maybe that's what we should do. But is it possible you can change the species of the
Yeah, so there's 3 different species. The one in Australia is different. As in now the two systems.
We've got a lecture on that Wednesday. People and
We don't know exactly the exactly the stance.
Sorry.
last week. Yeah, casting.
Yeah, exactly. I've got all this today.
Just don't start to the water's done.
No, this is like, yeah, this is the provisional. But it's like, yeah, they were supposed to. Grade 5, but they've done the same thing before. Because we have to
I was just like, how much can I write? Like, what a person.
This specialist hasn't been but yeah, she's like, I'm going that's left more as well. Maybe exam is I don't know. Yeah, 10% less exam. A week or so. Shoot after or the same week of the exam.
Yeah, I like to assignments due.
That's insane. Yes. I did have some sun. The recipe does not hold. If you make it, you just make it. The recipe is unbalanced. Yeah. Either you pass it around the pan. This one's I love it, but sometimes I go to one and I still have less than no, I still have.
done something.
Maybe, I think you gotta turn on over there.
Oh,
You know,
yeah, it's really stuffy in here.
yeah. No, just behind you. On the wall, that light.
Oh,
Yeah, that looks like it's it.
press 4 to
That's it. Wait, I think that's it now.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Oh, so hot in here. No wonder you guys are falling asleep. Oh. So, our job here, this course, I was just thinking while I took a quick walk. Our job here is to really, for example, do you know how we just read through the article? I assume all of us we just read through the article on what Bill decided to tell us plan to do. Okay, our job as economists, we're like analysts, right? We basically cut through the BS, okay, and go, this is what we're actually doing, and this is okay, and then you go to the lecture class, maybe not because I don't think it needs any intervention. So our job as analysts, we go, okay, what's he really saying? So we question everything they say in the policy statement, okay? So whenever you see something, you question it, like, what is he actually doing? What is he actually saying? Is he doing that legitimate for what he or she is trying to do, okay? So never stop questioning, okay? Obviously, I don't know everything in the world, okay? I never claim to know, and nor I will ever know that much in the world. Okay? So if I do make a mistake on slides, okay, please let me know as well. Feel free to throw me questions, and I may not be able to. Oh, what is that? Smart art graphic? What's that? Okay. Obviously, I don't know what that is. Okay, anyway, so I guess for this course and for purpose of living the next 70 years or whatever, how old are you? Okay. Always don't stop questioning. Okay. Think about what the person's actually saying. Cut through all the flowery languages. Cut through all the BS, I call it, and then work out what that person is actually saying. Yeah. Okay. And part of my job here is to help you get to that point. All right. Doesn't stop fluffing my face. Okay. So a lot of us might seem very cynical and negative, but we're actually not. We just go, you know what? That's not what they're really saying. Okay, there's no big deal. You look at a whole bunch of climate policy that this guy came up with. Oh, it's just price. It's just quantity instrument. It's just a levy fee, whatever. Okay, it's just a standard. So it's really so for us to be very good policy officers, very good policy, for us to make really good policies, we've got to critique on other people's policy, what type of mistake they're doing, or what they're doing good at. Okay, what's good and bad. So today's class is interesting in a sense that it actually leads towards, it follows the same sort of structure as what I swear I've got something in my face. It kind of leads you to that way of thinking. It will get us to this point of cost-benefit analysis. Okay, we're going to do a bit more detail next week as well. Okay, but as you see, there's like 3 classes in cost-benefit analysis. It's a really big thing to do. It's a really good way to structure the way you think. So by the end of this class, everyone that turns up to every class, you will become this cynical analyst. No, well, don't be all selfish and stuff, like selfish way of thinking as well. But anyway, it's just a way to help you guys read through a problem, okay? And even in just talking about exam questions, the exam's already been set, okay? You're gonna get like a nice case study, and you're gonna read through and think about how to answer it. So part of the skill that you will gain from sitting through 8 classes is to get into that analytical skill, okay? Just cut through the flowery languages, cut through all the big words and everything, and then at the end, it's just like, cut to the bare bones, and it's just, price, it's just this is how you answer it. It's always the same kind of answer. It's always the same base. It forms the same basic technique, always the same theory, okay? So it's just a matter of saying the right thing. So remember a long time ago when I first started, on the first class last week, I said, well, you know, for economics, the beauty of economics is you don't need to write a lot. You just need to get to the point. Okay? There's really, you don't really need to waffle on a lot of things. You do not need to write something to explain things, okay? But you don't need to go like details. I know law would do that, would encourage you to do that, but not so much economics. Okay? Yeah, there you go. It's not. They're also not that. Once you understand something, you don't really need to remember too many things as well. Yeah. Anyway. So last week we considered possible ways we can manage pollution. So just I guess in a rather, in my opinion, somewhat superficial level, we just went through a whole bunch of different types. Standards, price, levies, tax, whatever. Okay. They roughly fall into three groups. Okay. So two groups and two subgroups in the other group. So you get your standards. Okay, uniform standards, which is like a prime example is like that Kyoto Protocol. Okay. Okay, it's a bit like that. And the other ones, which is, you get your price instrument, taxes, and quantity instruments, and we call them all economic instruments, economic policy instruments, or market-based instruments, okay? Or economic way to mitigate pollution. Okay. Market solutions. And I mean, you can come up with so many names for the same thing. It's incredible. A long time ago, I used to work in a consultancy firm, and we have to make things sound so flowery and beautiful. I think I quit after like a month because I can't stand it. It's just like, why are we just saying? Well, my question was, why are we saying one thing that I can cover in like maybe it's 10 words, and we have to write a whole essay about it? Why? Why are you padding it all out? Oh, but that's what our client wants. I'm like, really? If I'm a client, I just want to read one sentence, not a page. Anyway, so that old boss and me on that. I don't know where he's coming from. Business people, anyway. Last week we considered possible ways, okay? These coming two classes, we will look at these, investigate these in a bit more, just slightly more detail. Not great detail, it's just really impossible to cover like one thing in great detail. You can study a tax system, a taxation, a climate change tax system, you can spend like years studying this. But for the purpose of I guess completing this part of the course, understanding how to talk to economists. Okay, I think that's sufficient for now. Market-based systems, both pollution taxes and cap and trade schemes regimes are now considered far more superior than these command and control uniform standard type policies. Okay. I have met a professor one time, and I said something. I was a young PhD student back then. Okay. And he said, I said, something about command control policy, blah, 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 ha, ha. And he looked at me and goes, never call these uniform standards command control. We're not in the military here. He got really upset. And I'm like, okay. And then here he goes. Just letting you know, you can just call it standards. I think these days we just call it standards. The greatest benefit is that even though they do require government intervention to set the price of pollution directly or indirectly, so price for taxes, obviously the difference between price and quantity instruments is either you set the price of pollution directly in the form of a tax, or set it indirectly through just setting the amount of emission to pollute, maximum pollution, maximum amount that you can pollute, and then just let them trade, okay? So pollution cap that yields a price. Regulated firms have this flexibility to respond to the price a command control system denies, okay? So the great thing, you should see later on today's oh my God, what will I do? Two questions. So why is the pollution tax far more efficient? It's because one of the main reasons is because of the flexibility. Okay. Okay, I regret doing that. Okay. The reason is that, remember last week I mentioned about how different firms have different production functions. So translating it to us, we all of us have different budgets, different ways to manage our budget. So we're all very different. So I will have a budget, say $10 per day. You guys have a budget of $15 a day, or $50 a day, or $100 a day. Okay, we all have different operational budgets, and it's really hard for a central agency, a government, to know what your production function is, how you operate. It's really hard, and by slacking on some uniform standard doesn't quite cut it. It doesn't really. It's not the most efficient way to manage pollution, the type of pollution. Okay, so the best way is just to let people work it out how much they pollute, etc. Okay, and you do that through a tax or like tradable quota. Okay. Yeah. Remember, there's quotas and there's tradable quotas. Quota is like a standard; it's just a standard. Okay, tradable quotas that's a market-based issue. Okay, and this flexibility exists not only within a firm but across a firm within a high market. So people can just change their behaviour a lot quicker than a central agency comes in and goes, oh, you need to change this and that and this. So in some way, it's like, I guess a social, I guess a communist economy versus a pure market economy. Okay, so these days it's mostly market economy in that end of the spectrum. Okay, because it's not easy for each of us individual agents to operate, to work out the best way to manage our budget. Okay. And we know what we want. We know what we want. The government may not know what we want. Okay, but that's pretty obvious. Okay. So we know exactly what our demand curve is and what we demand, but people outside us will not know what we want. Okay, they can guess, but that's it. You know? Anyway, so there you go, across often the entire market. So industry, even on an industry level, it's really hard for a government body to really know how well or how the industry operates. Okay, so there's a difference between being in the industry and just outside. Okay, you really don't know the intricacies unless you're in the industry. So it's too hard basket. Just put on the tax and let them work it out themselves. I think that's the easiest way. Okay. So we're going to consider carbon tax in a bit more details. I hope, unfortunately, two of my slides just somehow disappeared. So we might have to finish it a bit earlier than expected. But anyway, it's okay. It's fine. We can cover it next week. Okay. What it is, how it works, why is it better than the standard? So I think I kind of covered that already. The second type is, get this awesome flexibility. Oh, here you go. Here's NB equals MC again. Quickly, remember this optimal level of pollution? I think we all know this by now. I don't need to repeat it once again. So the whole point is to get to this optimal point of pollution and get society to pollute at that point, okay? So that's the reason why we use all these tax, all these policies, just to get to this point. It doesn't matter whether you use a tax or a quantity or a standard or whatever way to get to that optimal level. It doesn't matter. Okay? The point is to get to that point and get to this optimal point, this Q star, this point, okay? How you get there, that's the big challenge, okay? So we know what our end goal is, we just have to get there, all right? And it's quite difficult, it's not easy. So, so back to another famous economist. Unfortunately, they're all men at this stage. I've tried to find, just to balance out the gender inequalities, hopefully. It's just, it just happens, this guy is really awesome. I always get it's always find this gender inequality a bit awkward, to be honest. I'm more like a merit-based person, but at the same time, I do feel for us females that we are kind of discriminated against at times. So I don't know, I don't have an answer. I have no real answer. To be honest. Anyway, so this guy's called Bill Norhaus, or William Norhaus, also known as Bill, obviously. So he received the Nobel. By the way, economics don't actually have a Nobel Prize. Okay, there's no Nobel Prize like chemistry for economics. It's actually called a prize in memory of Albert Nobel, but they get the same prize as a Nobel Prize, the same amount of money. They get that amount. They get like $1 million. And he shared this with another guy called Paul Romer, who's also a really, really good economist on not environmental, but in macroeconomics, like growth rates, etc. Really, really fantastic. Anyway, so he won the prize. He shared the Nobel Prize this year with for integrating climate change into the long-run macroeconomic analysis. Okay. So that's what it is in short, in 10 words or less. I think he's done a lot more than that. If you feel like reading about the big press release for, you just follow these links, okay? We'll also find an identical picture on the first link as well. Okay? Lots of picture of this guy. So he actually started this whole incorporating climate change into this whole bigger. I think he's the one that came up with this whole big the general equilibrium model, the CGE, which we'll come across with later, big kind of model. So incorporating nature of economic modelling due to worries about fossil fuel usage and warming of the climate. Okay, so he's the one that go, okay, let's just apply economics in a quantitative way to analyse how policy impacts on how we can curb climate change. Okay, and he spent many years. I'm talking about like 40 plus years. Okay, studying this. All right, and we haven't been. I'm not 40 yet. Okay. So imagine how much there is to study about environmental economics. It's not something we can study in 8 classes or 8 weeks, 8 years, not even whatever. It takes so many years. Okay, this guy's dedicated. Anyway, even I can't move on. But pretty awesome stuff. So anyway, after many years of research in the mid-90s, he created, I think in '96, I think he created this integrated assessment model. It's called a DICE. I think it's some dynamic integrated assessment, something equilibrium model. Okay, I forgot the name. So RICE is a regional version of DICE. Okay. So if you come across that, if you ever just Google Norhouse and DICE, you'll come across that model. And it's a quantitative model that describes a global interplay between the economy and the climate. Okay, he actually models, this big, this general equilibrium model. So he integrated theories, empirical results on physics, chemistry, and economics. So interdisciplinary much. So Norhouse model is widely used to simulate how the economy and the climate co-evolve. Okay, it examines the consequences of climate policy interventions, for example, carbon taxes. Okay. And his model has been used in most prominently in the US EPA. Okay, actually, it's been used in a lot of places. There's a reason why he got the Nobel Prize. His contribution is amazing. I do hope one day more of his work is in the university curriculum, not just specifically for environmental economics, but also in just general macro and microeconomics. He did write quite a few books on just macroeconomic analysis. Okay, I just hope 10 years later, if I'm still teaching this course, it will be just mainstream. It will just be part of, and we can get into nitty-gritty details. Okay. Even more so. Are we going to go and rush and read about him? No, that's actually good. He actually wrote a really good paper. You can read some of his papers. It's really reader friendly. So a bit more on what Norhouse did. So it's funny. The day when he announced it, when the Nobel Prize was announced, the IPCC, the Intergovernment Panel for Climate Change. Okay. That's where Tom is, I think, at the moment, I believe. I think that's where he is. If not, maybe someone else. Have you mentioned where he is at the moment? Yeah, I think he's actually at that conference. I don't take my word for it. It's actually looked after by the UN, so I just got UN IPCC, the same thing. So they actually released a statement on the same day that he got a Nobel Prize that if we don't look after our mission, and we don't cut our mission by half in the next 10 plus years, next 10 to 12 years, I think it was, then we're going to get a lot of catastrophic effects from climate change. It's incredible how just like a 1 degree change in global temperature, it basically stuffs up so many things. It's like a chain reaction. It just one thing happens, the whole world will just you will see a lot of massive issues just by just 1 degree change. Yeah. I really genuinely hope something will, that by him winning the Nobel Prize, is actually placed climate change in the forefront of policy making. Okay. So I think just by him getting that prize is a really good starting point, just to get people. Unfortunately, the US, US is not really. Against it. Anyway, whatever. Norhaus value of using prices to reduce carbon emissions. So he said his premise, of course, is what a lot of environmental economists have been saying for years. Okay, rising prices through a carbon tax is much more effective and efficient way to lower carbon emissions. Okay, than direct government control that limits the quantity of emissions. Okay, it's so much more effective. And it showed that in his modelling. Because he's done so many models, okay, it shows that time after time. And naturally, higher prices will encourage firms to consume to find alternatives to carbon-based products, as well as encouraging innovation and new technologies that will make these substitutes competitive. It is showing now, okay. Even the decade ago, there's a lot. We have the MRET scheme, like a lot of renewable schemes, okay. But it's now after a decade later, we're starting to see some impact. So I think that's one thing with policy making, just in terms of consideration, just I guess short term for your environment, just broad. Think about the time lag, the time it takes for something to see impact of. Okay, that your policy, how long will it take? Usually takes a while. Okay, so any changes. That's one of the reasons why governments the environment is a bit of a kind of reluctant kind of policy play thing, because by making government is 3 years term. Even by implementing something now, it will take another at least 5 years, usually 10 years or more to see any impacts of it. But as a policy, as a government, as a prime minister, whatever, okay, you want to see things you do to have an impact straight away, right? But then again, you have all these changes of government in such a relatively short turnover government. It's really hard for them to set a policy that would enable them to see impact straight away. So that's one of the reasons why sometimes the environment just don't get included in all the things. That's a cold sad fact about this. Yeah, takes a while. Any questions? It's really sad. I need a tissue. It is sad, okay. Seriously, 20 years later, you'd be like, oh my God, I remember I was sitting in this lecture, there will be some catastrophic issue going to happen, and it's happening right now. Yeah, unfortunately, society is not so proactive. We're kind of reacting to things. Like, when something happens, you react to it once it happens. It's just, yeah. And unfortunately for climate change, if something does happen now and we try to fix it, it will take a while for that fix to show some impact. Yeah. Anyway, so I don't know. We were stuffed with stuff. Ineffective. So asking whether all these policies is ineffective. Not really. Okay, it's actually quite. Anyway, so what is ineffective here is here you go. Direct limits on emission became the primary mechanism for both the 97 Kyoto Protocol. It started many years ago, and the 2016 Paris Accord. Okay, so these are like little signatures from different countries, and go, oh, I'm committed to emission control by this by certain time period. We'll reach that low emission. Okay. So we'll come on this a lot. We will reach our emission target by this point in time. And they go back home and go, okay, we have to do this, and this to achieve that goal. So that's how they try to achieve this. How they try to commit to the protocols. Okay, that's the crux of it. There's an article on the Kyoto thing for this week's reading as well. We'll talk about that next time around. And yeah, so these agreements have, all in all, it hasn't really reached, led to many countries leading to their emission reduction goals. Okay, it's a good look. It's a good start. I mean, a lot of things are a good start, but I hope it eventuates to something a bit more meaningful. So IPCC is like, you know, if you're interested in climate change, that's the place you work. Okay, that's the place to work. They conclude that well, that's the place you should be part of, I should say. Conclude that the world must decrease net CO2 emission by about 50% by 2030. So that's what they say around that same time when he got a Nobel Prize. So they said they must reduce emission by 50% by 2030 and eliminate by 2050 to maintain Earth habitability. So the Earth, if we don't reach that goal, it will become quite unlivable. North House is fairly indifferent whether a direct tax on carbon or a cap and trade scheme in achieving this goal. So it's the same. Last week I mentioned an article called Price and Quantity Instrument by this guy called Martin Wiseman, and another guy called Pfizer, not Pfizer, Phaser or something. Another paper that actually follows on that paper. They also say the same thing, and he actually follows. They're all in the same kind of, you know, group, I guess. So he also had the same view, like just even based on his model, right? It doesn't really matter. You can still achieve the goal either way. Okay? As long as countries raise the price of fossil fuel to protect the climate, which is a global public good. Okay? So you see, the notion of public good is coming back to haunt us. Okay. So all the things about market failure, property right, what's that one? Public good. You know, they're all interlinked. Like that's the reason why we look at this, because of the public good attributes to environmental goods leading to market failure, and the government has to come in and try to fix all the problem. Okay. And it's whose fault it is? Our fault as well as humans. But we've been spoiled. It's so complicated. Society is complicated. Humans are complicated. We're all complicated people. Anyway, if not, he said we will free ride, taking the benefit of using fossil fuel without paying for the environmental costs. So, you know, even for example, like last week, not fossil fuel, but for straws. Okay, no, the $1 pack of 50 straws is actually not the true cost of the straw of that packet of straw. The true cost, we might be paying $1, but the true cost might be like $50 because because of the eventual impact on the environment. Okay. Externalities need to be built into the price to create an incentive for individual carbon users to reduce consumption. That's really that's the really crux of it. Okay, internalizing externalities. Okay, putting the price in your including the price in your production function, and we go from there. Okay. But you know, I mean, as a producer, you just want to produce something, churn out something as cheaply as possible. Okay? As cheaply as possible. Okay. Finally, he also raised the idea of this. This is interesting. A global climate club. He raised this idea. So it involved a critical mass of countries that would participate by agreeing an international target carbon price. Okay. Ooh. Say meeting at a $30 per ton of carbon dioxide. Any method will do just to say to meet this price, doesn't really matter. Okay, some price instrument, cap and trade scheme, okay, or just some hybrid of the scheme. We actually had a hybrid. Do you know back a couple of years ago when defunct, it's Australia had the carbon price scheme. That was actually a hybrid scheme. Okay. Anyway, so. Nations that refuse to join this pricing system would be punished, perhaps by club members imposing some sort of trade tariffs on goods imported from non-members. Yeah, except most goods are currently imported from China or India. I'm not sure they would be threatened by trade tariffs. You know what I mean? Like, if we are so dependent on a lot of these countries for goods, I'm not sure we want to put a trade tariff on them. It will just end up impacting us as consumers. Anyway, just a thought, just an aside. If the cost of refusing membership is high enough, most nations would join this club. There's many issues, once again, like many things. Acknowledge a carbon tax raise some broad practical design and implementation issues. Okay, cross-border tax, best to collect tax, optimal, what the optimal rate would be, what to do with the revenue here. Okay, there's all these issues. Is it realistic? So we found share currently is trading about $30 dollars per about $30. Okay, usually, but that's the kind of ballpark price at the moment. I think some research saying at the moment that even $30 is really not enough to avoid this climate catastrophe. Okay, it's still really cheap, to be honest. And also we have one of the world's biggest nations. You have the US. They're not very cooperative, as you know. Okay, with that president at the moment, they're not very. So there's a lot of politics in play. There's so much politics, as always. And you look at it in a very pure academic point of view. It's like, we can do this, but you know, in the real world, it's not that easy. So that's why progress is so frustrating. Slowly. Okay. Any questions? Yep. So that's my introduction to. Thanks, Bill. Bill Norhouse, that is, not Bill, not the other Bill. Okay. So we're going to look at carbon tax, which is what we call a price instrument. Next class I will cover what we call quantity instrument. It has the same sort of criteria as well in terms of evaluation. That will, of course, it will be a lot more. So really, it's just a method to make polluters pay. Okay, I think that's been repeated multiple times already in this class. So it can be it can be carbon compound. If you want to generalize this more, you can call it like carbon tax. Okay, emissions tax, pollution tax. Okay. It is a financial disincentive for polluters to engage in activities that would result in emission of polluting compounds. Okay. They're usually administered through a tax, levy, or fee. Okay, depending what jurisdiction you are at. I know a lot of smaller jurisdictions they call it levy or fee as well. Okay. Just taxation implications. Okay, on their emission. It is considered to be a much better policy option by economists because it is a lot more cost effective. Okay, that's been raised many times. Okay. So that's another. So remember, I show you those two questions. That one question at the end of the tube for this week's tube or next week's tube workshop. Sorry. One the why are carbon tax a lot better way to mitigate pollution is one reason is flexibility, like a couple slides ago, flexibility, and the other positive is a lot more cost effective. Okay. Than a standard to mitigate pollution, a lot more flexibility. They're all related, obviously. Flexibility gives firms a lot better way to reduce costs in the production function. Okay. Why we are uncertain what the true monetary value of damages per unit of CO2. Okay. So when we're not really sure, like rather than putting slap on some standard that maybe may not be backed by good science. Okay. It is better just to let them work it out. Let's just work it out where the optimal level of pollution is. It's too hard. It's really uncertain. Okay. It's uncertain. Tax, because we are also uncertain of the ideal level of pollution for society rather than a regulator prompting a set amount based on our demand, or based on our demand preferences. Okay. So, do I have this here? This will be quite useful for your assignment. So I think, remember, I think question 4 on your assignment, I mentioned something, how do we ensure policy will be successful? Something along that line, okay? So we actually have this, I actually had this just came up quite relatively recently. All in all, it's about some sort of a framework, governance, okay, a way to work out whether your policy is sound or not. So you want to see whether your policy, whether it is a fair policy across everyone in your that all stakeholders, I should say, stakeholders. Does it align with policy and objectives? So faster, okay. Alignment of policy and objectives. It's a stable and predictable policy. When you implement a policy, you want it to be as predictable as possible, okay. You want to make sure that even after 2 terms in government, this policy will still be in place, or something similar to be in place. That's why earlier in the article, Bill Shorten goes, what we want to stick to a baseline and credit scheme, so it's more continuous, whether they will be in government or this term or this term. Okay. They basically try to fit their policy into this model. Okay, this framework. Transparency. Transparency, quite literally, you want to see where all the money goes. That's one thing, and how we come up with this the price or quantity of emission that's allowable emission. One of the thing with transparency relates to the revenue the government collects from the taxes. What do they do with it? Most of the time, it would go to some climate change fund, or it might go to other parts of the economy, like education, for example, transport, etc. Okay, something like that, some sort of investment. And I think one of the biggest criticisms for taxes is where are these revenue actually going to where it's intended to go. So this is quite an important point for cynics like us. To make sure policy would work. All right. Efficiency and cost effectiveness. Once again, you can't. I mean, what's the point of implementing a policy when it's so when it's so costly to implement? Okay, that's really defeat the purpose of a pricing of a market-based instrument. Right? You want to be efficient. You want to be cost-effective. You want to get your money's worth, and that will be the policy that would cost the least but achieve the same goal. Okay, it's the same sort of basic things, basic argument. Is that you want to get from this point to this point in the fastest way, best possible way, fastest, cheapest way possible. Okay, without compromising all the other factors. Okay, and that would be the perfect policy. Obviously, because I guess the World Bank is somewhat constrained to make this acronym faster. So if I'm to rank which is the most important point in this framework, I would say efficiency and cost effectiveness would be the most important thing you consider in implementing policy. Obviously, I mean all these points are very important, but I would say efficiency and cost effectiveness would be the number one thing you consider when you design a policy. Okay, what's the point if it's really expensive? Like defeating the purpose, right? And finally, reliability and environmental integrity. That kind of falls. These two are related more. Something that's a bit outside economics. Okay, it's more like a social distribution / fairness, social equity point of view type of. Framework, rules. All right. So fairness, reliability. These two are more social kind of type of criteria. That's right. Alignment policy objective. You have to find out. The main thing is you need to find out what are you trying to do. Okay. What you're trying to do would determine what type of policy you go for. Okay. You know, whether you're doing a tax or quantity as well. Like, what are you trying to answer? What are you trying to do? Okay. Like, what's your objective? So, in relation to your assignment, think about what question are you trying to answer? You know, you go to the very basics. Okay. What are you trying to do? And this sort of So these two, stability and predictability and transparency, they fall under more like a government type law. Government/law type of criteria. Okay, so this is just you need to tell you what your objectives are. So you have your social aspect, fairness, reliability. You have your alignment of policy objective, which is you need to define what you're trying to do first. Okay, and you have this one, which is more law-based, more law and order based type. Okay. And you have efficiency and cost effectiveness, which is more economic type. So as you see straight away, once again, multidisciplinary approach, okay, to the ideal carbon tax design. All right. Oh, there you go. I've been talking. Oh, there you go. Just talking all about it. Yeah, you can read about that. This is from a manual called the carbon tax manual on the World Bank website. You can have a read about it. I pretty much just covered everything just then. Okay. Is there anything I didn't cover? No. Same. Yeah. Yeah, polluters pay. Did I mention polluters pay principle the entire time? I can't remember. I call it PPP. I really cannot remember. Yeah. So anyway, have a read through this. I'm not going to read through this here. It's too dry and boring, to be honest. But yeah, for your assignment, for question 4 in your assignment, think about how your policy fits into this model. Okay. As an economist, of course, I would put efficiency and cost effectiveness as the number one thing. Okay, that's what I would do. But that's because I'm an economist. Okay, if you're a lawyer, I would think about whether they will also consider things like fairness as well. Okay, social equity things. All right. But as I said, they are kind of forced into putting it into some sort of easy to remember acronym, so they have to kind of put it in this way. Okay. Anyway, so please read through this. It's quite good. If it's too faint on the slides, then just go and read through it in the actual document. It's like a 120-page document. But just find that particular table. I think it's like table 2. Table box 2. Okay. How much more? Let's do a fair bit. Let's take a quick break. I'll come back at 11 o'clock. Okay. Hello.
Just got a question about total question. Sorry, it says the grandfathering. So how is the favour towards those produce more?
Oh, okay. So let's just say industry 2.
I would come out.
I'd be scared.
Industry 2. Anyway, so industry 1, so every year they go, so year 1 the margins start so 50 tons, 2,
I'm so happy to
60, 3, 50, 60, okay, so up to here. So on average, I think it's 2
Oh, why? How's grandfathering coming to those produce more?
Yeah, so let's just say for the second guy, they already the same time. So same
That's why I was stressed.
So they're all produced from the same but they discovered different ways. So it means, so when a grandfathering couple goes, oh, okay, let's just keep this going on for 5 years. And based on historical research, let's just keep this going.
I still have to pay for 8 years.
And these quotas are way they were.
Quotas like
I don't know quota, like it's okay, it's like these quotas change, they can change with each other. So regarding how they're going to start giving me
But away from the blood.
so it kind of favors this guy who probably
No, I mean like,
these guys. So they only get 25 of these guys. It's paid because grandfather is amazing.
so they don't have to pay after.
Oh, I think these guys are
Exactly the same. It's like 644.
so they get, so I know like because they produce the same amount of industry, but these guys may not be as efficient as the others. So it means they get more, they get more, they get and this quota says, so they have time. They get whatever, okay? Say they cost this, they work this much amount, that means these guys get a lot more money if they're potentially treating you or because they've been more efficient. Just because they're strong moving. So it's not really oh, that's not code, that's just like that's code of like
grandfathering.
it's just a way to allocate it. It's just an allocation.
Why don't everyone just look at this? Like
They call it and go, oh look, we've got so it's more like but these companies, but they've been doing this for years. That's not practice. They can do like a
No, I've already started. Wasn't the one
for doing your research.
it's just a mode, like the number one. It's basically just it's like imagine an inheritance. That's what grandfathers do. So you and I are like brothers and sisters, and great grandparents just passed away. And you claim that, or even if you do anything, she doesn't deserve it. Okay, and your opinion, and I thought it would be like for me, I'm hopefully a lot more efficient. So it just take more time to do things out of so, but from the outside point of view, that oh, you take a lot more time to do something, so time will be like so you spend like 5 hours doing something, but it take 2 hours. So if the inheritance is based on how many hours you have to do household things, then you get more money.
Depends on the
Yeah. So it depends on how you want these characters. That's right. They should do it by output. Admissions.
and also mention that part as well.
Oh, yeah, I did. It's in the end. I'll get to that soon. But basically, usually when I think for any because someone was it you? Maybe someone asked me on this had it marking criteria or so. So I said look the maximum point mark is 20, but I'm also allocating 2 points. it's not artistic in a way, but maybe put on like different teams of text. Just something that we incorporate. So every year get a couple of groups. It's just money with
So we should focus on the.
So you can see here, part 4, it's really how do we ensure that that's really just the path for that criteria. So how can we ensure that's really you have to work out how to do that. So this one is it will take a bit of time to work out and improve. So this is a more like it's fine. But if you come up with a really good multi-incentive solution, even number 2 actually takes I allocated 6 marks because it's quite taxing. This is more it's quite taxing on but number 1, this one is fairly straightforward. So most of us people see it. Right? Does that help?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I'm doing the classic back. And then like I said, count tax efficient and any other. So we should tax it as applied instead of just giving subsidies like
The tax bill will do that confusing to half the So who's the benefit? Alright, let's just finish this off. I'm going to start to lose my voice again. So bad, I have a 2-hour limit on my voice. Yeah. constrained. So how do we go about modeling carbon tax, okay? So there's so many different, there's so many models out there. So many. Not just economic type of, you guys all right there? Doing an assignment? No? Okay. All right. It's going to be just under half an hour and then we come back on, as always. So how do we go about modeling carbon tax? Okay, this is there's different methods to model this sort of climate carbon policy. Okay, it can and cannot. It doesn't. It's not quite tax specific, but this is the way. This is how we approach it. Okay. They're not all economic economic approaches. Some of them are, I guess, what I call engineering science type. Okay, that's where you guys come into play. Okay. That's why engineers make such good economists, not the other way around. We're not careful enough. Anyway, so there's two ways. There's two ways to break down this type of modelling. We have a partial equilibrium or partial approach to a system, to investigate a system, versus a more global systematic approach. Okay? That's what Norhaus did, a big approach. Okay? That's a big approach, and it's quite hard. It's quite hard actually. So you focus on either very industry specific or part of an industry even. Okay, so if you want to go down to that level, or you may consider something a bit more industry wide, or even just a lot bigger type of model, okay? Bigger, wider reach, I should say. And then you get your, I mentioned top-down and bottom-up approach, okay? You're going to see this a lot in literature. This is a top-down model. You literally, in an economic point of view, you look from all these big macroeconomic factors, and then you go, how do we go about doing this from up here? We think we're God. And then you have these, these awesome engineers down the bottom and work their way up. So I remember, and that's why a lot of times economists and engineers do clash. They feel like we don't do enough work. As I said, we're very, airy-fairy, I call it, airy. But it's just a different way to approach a problem, okay? You guys have your own way to solve a problem. We have our own way of solving a problem. I think both ways have their own merits, and I think we should work together. I think that would be that's my view. Anyway, so it's like as a whole versus technology and practice focus. So economists, we always consider any economic text we always go, what would be the net benefit for economy as a whole? Okay, we look at it from top-down approach, okay? Whereas a more to technological and science type of approach, it's more like a bottom-up approach, okay? They're more technologies and practice focus, okay? Which is also fine. Just once again, depending what you're looking at, what question you're trying to answer, okay? And then you break it down to four basic approaches to modelling. It's almost like mix and match. Okay, you get your partial equilibrium model, which is what economists do. Okay, we do it on a partial model. Okay, used to understand how a carbon tax would affect a specific part of the economy. Okay, it could be the car industry. Okay, particular a segment of the economy. Whatever. You can go as specific as you want, or as not specific as you want. Mostly quite specific ones. So you might find it funny when I said, "I'll just focus on a small area and just focus on that." Okay, that's why. I guess that's where I'm coming from. Remember, at the end of the day, this course is about getting you guys to know how to communicate with economists and likewise as well. How you can see from where they're coming from. So this is we are very partial. We're very partial to this type of people. Engineering cost models, okay, used for identifying the potential costs and contributions of particular technologies and practices available to reduce emission. Okay, I guess that's an aside. Like as I said, I'm not currently working in pollution type of policy at the moment. I'm working on 5G technology actually. So we actually work with some engineers, and they, whenever we come up with this, oh, this is the problem here, and we get the engineer group telling us of the potential costs and contributions of 5G, and we're like, we don't really care. We only care about the regulatory part of it, and we don't know how to regulate because we don't know enough about 5G. And the engineers are telling you, you need information from us. You need to consider this, this, and this. They're like, we don't really care about these things. We care about this. So every meeting's quite interesting, quite heated at times, how we get about dealing with some things. Okay, we care about how 5G impacts on the economy as a whole. We care about how it impacts on industry structure, market structure, those sort of things. Okay, but these guys down here, you guys, I guess, will be more interested in how would these individual components, 5G, there's not just faster internet, but there's other parts of components of 5G, there's like fifth generation mobiles, okay? How would this component affect further up the economy? So they're more focused down the bottom, like the start from, not saying it's less or more, it's just from this part. Whereas we are more like looking up from going, oh, how would this impact on this, and this, okay? I think we do need both type of analysis. I think that's where the downfall of economic models are. That's the problem. And then you get more top-down models, more if you're interested in energy type of economics, energy regulation, energy type models, you would consider a lot of these type top-down models. More what I call this the CGE, the general equilibrium type of models, energy. Captures the entire economy. Many versions of these exist. Okay, there's so many types of models exist. Okay, you also get econometric models. We as economists we're a big fan of econometric modeling. So it's you guys anyone ever done any statistics? Yeah, it's like you find out all this you have a bunch of variables and you work out the coefficient and you find out how one change of something would change change it. You hold one thing constant and how it changes all the other variables. Okay? Pretty cool stuff. They're very good at evaluating impacts of carbon tax on macroeconomic performance indicators. So things like GDP, employment, housing, consumption, demand, consumption is demand. Those sort of things, they're really good. So if you're able to capture what variable is important to investigate, econometric model is our to-go-to model, okay? Well, my to-go-to model. So I do a lot of econometric modeling. Actually, I'm an economist / econometrician. Alright. So we do a lot. I did a lot of that in the past. Not so much at the moment. I'll probably will soon when the time comes. I don't do so much of this CGE things. Okay, it's much more. I think really more houses. Not my thing. Now there's a lot of CGE model out there. Pretty cool. The way in which economic actors, they call it, economic actors, agents, whatever, adjust their behavior to changes in prices and the interaction of many parts of the economy. So it's a lot, this GE model is a lot bigger, the more systematic way to look at an industry-wide impact, a lot broader impact, okay? They're often very, also a lot more complicated as well. I find econometric model a lot easier to learn. I'm lazy. I like lazy things like econometrics. Okay, this is quite hard actually. I think both of them can be quite hard. So these are good for in estimating the level and distribution of costs of a carbon tax. Okay, that's why it is the Nobel Prize winner some expertise. That's how it became quite famous. Okay, CGE model became quite famous in investigating climate change. Especially when you're looking at a wider, like European regional kind of level, like the big European level, CG is the way to go. So finally, you have these energy system models, type of model. Look, there's so hundreds of models out there. There's so many. This is just trying to group them all together in some way. Okay? These are top-up models. Once again, I guess a sciencey type of models. Okay. Identify the combination of technologies that can meet a jurisdiction's energy demand at lowest cost. Okay. So all these this model in particular, it looks at potentials to meet mitigation targets and for understanding how these technology mix adapt to carbon tax. Okay. So I think the next question is what on earth do I use? It's like there's already like a list of a bunch of models out there. What on earth do I use? Okay. Once again, it depends on what you're trying to answer. So for an economic metric model, for example, you want to say, I want to investigate the impact of this baseline and credit scheme on interest on the housing market, on home loan interest rate. Okay, you want something very specific like that, you go to an econometric model. Okay, you have two quite specific variables to want to investigate. Okay, these two things, and then you can easily run a model, like for example, basic regression to start off with. So once again, depending on what you're trying to answer. So in terms of a bit more relating it to your assignment, you have to ask, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to answer? Okay. Which will lead to, I guess, your ultimate objective of what you're trying to achieve. Okay. It's a good research habit to find out first of all, find out what you want to do. For those of you that will go on to do a thesis in the next year or in the future, once again, defining this research question is probably one of the hardest things to get started on your thesis. Okay, it's so hard. You can take 3 months, you can take 3 years to just try to get a research question. Okay, like we're trying to answer. Multidisciplinary approach. I can't spell. I'm really sorry. There's a typo there. Different models can provide different insights, and taking multiple approaches can help give us provide us with more insights into a range of more relevant factors. Okay. I'm a big fan of just to understand different types of disciplines. Okay, I'm a big fan of incorporating that. And as I said before, if you're in the job market, this is what we're looking for: people that can communicate with other disciplines. Okay, not just in your own little cluster. Okay, you have to talk to other people, okay? And that's the way we approach policies. That's what we should be. Policymakers also need to consider their resources for modelling process, particularly available funding, personnel skills, data. Okay, there's no point of me doing a CG model because I would not know. I would not have the expertise to do it. Okay, but I would have the expertise to do econometric modelling. Okay. Depending on what's available, okay. If I'm the only resource in the entire group, in the entire analytic group, okay, then I guess we're stuck with econometric modeling. It's not all that bad, okay. So, yeah, or maybe you can outsource it. Okay. And data availability. Econometric models, for example, are notoriously data inefficient. Okay, we do need a lot of data to do things. So CG model. We can get around. We can get around it. But anyway, and plan ahead, especially in the case of more complex models. Okay, I think data is always a big deal. Like it's just sometimes, as I said earlier in the course, even if you have all the money in the world, like you ask the scientists out there, what data do I go and collect with this money? Like I have this funding, what do I go and collect? That's also a question in itself. And it all comes back down to what is the research question? What answer are you trying to seek? Unless we define that well, then we would not know what data to collect and to come up with a very good policy. Okay, I think a lot of times when in environmental policies or any policies in general, okay, you're not defining that objective, that research question well enough. So a lot of times they just fail miserably. Big fat waste of money. Okay, as I said earlier, I was meant to have a couple of slides after this, but they disappeared. Okay, I will cover a bit more this week. I hope my computer will be sorted. So anyway, so the question is, okay, I've already defined, like, I worked out how to model my carbon tax. Your next step is, okay, how do you define this tax base and how do you define the rate? That will come back to in terms of determining this optimal level of pollution. Okay, it comes back. So all those theory will come back to haunt us. Okay, any unintended effects of the of this sort of taxation base. Once again, every case is quite different. There may not be unintended effects. There's always some unintended effects, and whether we know them or not, that's a big issue. Okay, a lot of times we might be there are unintended effects, but we accounted for them. Okay, that's completely fine. We know this will happen. Yeah, we will look after it. Okay, but in times when these unintended effects are not accounted for, when we don't know but it happened, we're like, oh my god, we're stuffed. Okay, it happens a lot. Even what I'm doing now with the hello.
So I know a lot of economic policies have a sort of trial period in order to like test this. Does that have much of a role for stuff like this to sort of see the unintended effects in your work?
Yeah, so they trial in like smaller regions. Yeah, that's the reason why they do it, because there's a lot of they don't know what they don't know. Yeah. There also there's another branch. Talking about this, there's another branch of economics called experimental economics. A long time ago, I'm not sure they exist now, but you might sometimes find they're recruiting university students in particular because uni students are smart, okay, to attend these games where they go and trade some sort of carbon quotas, okay, emissions trading. And give them an incentive. They look, you started with $5, see how much money you can get in the end. Okay, so there's a lot of that type of experimental economic forum as well to test out this sort of scheme before actual implementation. Okay, so that's the branch. That's one branch of economics that you might be also interested in to investigate as well. So experimental. Let me write that, experimental economics. It's actually, there used to be a big branch. I'm not sure whether there's any more. Sometimes funding runs out and the whole place is closed. Okay, experimental economics. It's actually, it is a relatively new branch of economics. So a lot of people, in terms of policy implementation, a lot of the time we do go through this sort of laboratory-based type of implementation period to see how it operates in a, I guess, in a closed market, experimental sense. This is closely linked to something called behavioral economics. And this is psychology. It's based on psychology. Okay. In fact, a lot of economics are based on a lot of psychology. So anyway, so in terms of unintended effects, it is a really good way to find out things that we may not previously consider. Because look, face it, implementation of a new policy, it's really expensive. Okay. All right. So a bit more, I guess, more on the policy type of things. You know, revenue use and distribution. That's quite important to find out where that taxation revenue will be used. Okay. Remember the transparency criteria. Okay. I don't know what happened. Oh no. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Revenue use, compliance and enforcement. That's important too. Once you implement a policy, how do you make sure people comply by it and it's enforceable. And with any policy, you want to evaluate as you go along. All right. So that's why there's all these policy officers. Anyway, any questions? No. Yes. Falling asleep. Yes. Okay. Whatever. Cheap question. I do highly recommend you guys have a go at this. Okay, it's important. I guess that's really the crux of the course. Okay, learning about pollution taxes, okay, or carbon tax, whatever. Same thing. Discuss how a polluters pay scheme. So polluter pay scheme works for pollution tax for pollution tax for carbon pollution work. What? Okay, I will rewrite this. It doesn't. Okay, discuss how a polluter pay scheme works for pollution tax. Okay, I will rewrite that. I think what I'm trying to say. So this is like the second last draft I did before my computer went kaput. It was just sad. What I'm trying to say is discuss how a polluter pay scheme works for carbon pollution. Okay. Why is the pollution tax a far more efficient and effective way to control emission? I mean, I mentioned that so many times today. You should know this off by heart now, okay? If you've been listening. Explain why Kyoto carryover quotas are so important here, okay? Interesting stuff. Okay. Once again, this article is on the, I think it's one of those subscriber early type thingy, so either you access through the library website or you can just download the PDF I've made for you guys. So finally, just to wrap up today, someone asked me to put some assessment marking guide for the assignment. So here's the marking guide. So or everyone, no matter who, they should at least get 4 out of 20. Okay? So this is just really describing the environmental problem. Talk about the problem. You know, how many fish are dying, trees are dying, air is getting polluted, humans are dying, whatever. Okay, talk about it. Tell me about what the objective is, what you're trying to research on, what you're trying to solve, what answers are you trying to answer, what question are you trying to answer as well. It's all encompassing that. But first of all, describe the problem and then go from there. Okay. Environmental assessment. We haven't done this yet, so we will cover this after next Friday, after we finish off with all the pollution tax work. Okay. This one is weighted a bit more because it is part of cost benefit analysis. You are trying to evaluate these public goods, these non-marketed goods, I call it, okay, and it's quite tricky to do, especially with types of evaluation techniques. There's so many different types of evaluation techniques out there, and picking the one for you is quite tricky. Once again, there's no right or wrong answer for these assessments, okay? The point is to go through the process and just find out what needs to be assessed and what is worth assessing. All right, so the next part will also be, actually, I'll do all these add up to 20, yes, that's right. Okay. So next part. So you guys should be starting to able to do this now. The question 3. This is worth 6 marks because it is part of the issue, right? To form a good policy to solve the environmental problem that you're concerned with. So come up with about 2 policy options is completely fine. You come up with 3, also good too, okay? But the maximum amount of marks allocated will be about 6 marks, okay? Yeah, there you go. Fairly straightforward. One thing to make sure you set yourself up for the maximum amount of marks is that make sure how this policy compare to the base case, so compare to whatever that's happening at now, not 50 years ago, now. Okay, now with or without policy that's currently in place. That's the base case. All right. When I say base case, it's one of those cost-benefit type of terms, okay, that you might not yet be familiar with, but seriously by the end of this course you'll get sick of me mentioning these things. Just like market failure, but you'd be so sick of it. Okay, and we will conclude with a policy option. Understand, give reason why and how this environmental policy is preferred. You guys should be able to do that kind of starting to draft that kind of now, starting to think about like in that kind of realm by now because of this. No, not Morehouse. No, not you. Here, this faster design. Okay, this governance. I just call it governance. I don't know what the name is. Criteria. Okay. So that would just you have to describe your policy options just based on that criteria. Okay. So it's a very comprehensive type of assignment. It's quite hard, but it is worth 20 marks, and you're in 3rd year, so you should be able to do it. And I believe in you guys. Most of the assignments I receive are excellent. Okay, they're all excellent. you know, you get bulkier mark from here. Do a good job. I don't know when it is due. It's due like in 2 weeks, right?
A bit less.
Less. I'm thinking about extending the date because there's no. I don't like getting rushing. Let me ask Tommy and ask him to extend.
Yeah, that'd be good as well because we're only covering step 2 next week. So
Yeah.
we've got 5 days after that to finish the rest of it.
Yeah. All right, I will speak to Tommy about delaying. Anyway, so this bonus mark, the all important bonus mark. Okay, I like to give bonus marks. Okay, maybe not well. In the past, I've given bonus marks for various things like giving presentations, turning up to class. But you know, if you hit, you hit, whatever. You get a benefit of me chatting to you about things that maybe here. You can listen to the lecture recording. Whatever. Anyway, so bonus marks, but this time around, I will allocate bonus mark for policy creativity. So by that I mean not just it will create a disincentive for you guys to just copy straight from Wikipedia or some of those awesome journals. Okay, like it just creates some incentive to be a bit more creative. Doesn't honestly the policy sounds outrageous. Like it can be a bit more creative. It doesn't have to be stock standard types of policy. Just make it for example different tiers of tax or pricing schemes. That's also pretty creative in my Yes.
So as long as it makes some sort of logical sense that it's not wild, it doesn't matter if it was modern that it would fail basically.
Yeah, well, it's also not like some sort of weird, outrageous thing, okay? But like, as long as it follows some sort of economic logic, and you have a reason behind it, why you having 10 tiers for a taxation scheme in the river or something. As long as you explain it and you can implement this properly in a relatively cost-effective way, like it's, as long as it that follows these criteria. You know what? No policy is too crazy, to be honest. Like, I don't think it is. There's a lot crazier things out there. Okay. Incorporation of theory. Okay. Remember what makes economics so special is economic policy so special. It is at the end of the day based on solid theory. Okay. People's been spending years and years and years using this, doing this. That's the reason why they're good. Okay. And that's the reason why a lot of countries are adopting a market-based type of policy. Okay. Any questions? We're done. 11:30. Okay. All done today.
上一次妈的，上一次是真他妈极限，我操！上一次是真极限，我们最后他妈写到11点钟，我操！那天晚上写到11点半还是都几点钟，我操！可是说贼晚了，那天贼极限，我们改都改了好长时间。那一天下午一直在给他改语法。你好意思，那天下午我们在干嘛？你他妈心里没数吗？我操！给了90多个语法错误。Grammarly 改的，我们不是一个个给你看吗？对吧？这玩意改的不对呀！我操！哎呦！Grammarly 确实有用的，所有的那种都Grammarly 确实好用的，它那个是花的，而且我没有买正版，我是淘宝买的，淘宝买了半年才花了300多块钱。我没有，1年2个，还是正版。在哪里买的？我操！ 没有。